conflict that's happening in Europe about solar manufacturing. Let's at least start there. And how European solar manufacturers are being completely outcompeted by Chinese imports.
Yeah.
Europe added 40% more solar capacity in 2023 than it did in 2022. So it is rising exponentially. There are estimates that say that 95% of that technology for the solar installations came from China. We know this. We've done our deep dives into climate change and on the transition to renewables, and China dominates the supply chain for solar and wind, honestly. But the question is now coming in, like, Europe is considering these protectionist policies, so that they can they're thinking about tariffs on Chinese imports of solar and wind technology so that European solar and wind manufacturers can survive. On the other hand, that's going to slow down the transition to renewables. The German finance minister, Robert Habeck, I think his name is, specifically commented on rumors that the EU was considering Chinese tariffs. And he said, I want to caution against that because it will slow down our transition enormously.
Yeah. And that guy he's an FDP member.
Okay.
So that means he's a liberal neoliberal.
Okay.
So he's going to be anti-tariff philosophically.
Definitely.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. So I'm just wondering, we've talked about this before. Where are you landing on it now?
I think the United. So let's. Okay, I'm going to answer your question with a little bit of U.S. context, right? What was the Inflation Reduction Act?
Yeah.
On a larger level, the Inflation Reduction Act was a bunch of protectionist policies, right? It was tax credits, but only for U.S. goods, right? To spur U.S. manufacturing in the energy space.
Yeah.
And that hurts Europe. That hurts China.
Yeah.
Because now all of these U.S. consumers are now buying from U.S. companies. As an American, I support that. I like that specifically because these goods are so important for national security's sake. Now go over to Europe. Do I think Europe should have its own Inflation Reduction Act equivalent?
So you do support tariffs, but more or less.
I don't know if tariffs is. I don't know enough to say do tariffs and tax credits actually end up doing the same thing.
Okay.
I don't know if tariffs and tax credits both end up putting more money into the fight for climate change, right? Because think about this. Tax credits are giving money to people for them to spend on green energy, right?
Sure.
Tariffs is keeping the price of the home one the same and then making the price of the foreign one go up. So it's actually not making it easier for the consumer to switch. It's only making it more costly.
Okay. So basically the difference between the US tax credit model is not make it harder to buy from China, it's make it easier specifically to buy from the US.
Yes.
Versus tariffs are not make it easier to buy from Europe, but they are make it harder to buy from China.
Yes. Europe.
Are we just discussing technicalities? Are we just discussing semantics at this point?
I don't think so, because of the cost of the consumer. Who's taking on the cost? The United States has determined that the U.S. government will take on the cost to fight climate change, right? Now in Europe, they're saying that the consumer takes on the cost because they're not doing anything to lower the cost. They're only doing things to, get the international cost or the foreign product cost non-compatible with the domestic.
Yeah, okay. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not going to actively slow the US version would not actively slow what our current progress is. It could just take one lane and make it go faster.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think I agree with that. I am against the tariffs in Europe,
Yeah.
to be clear. Again, I mean, we've talked about this so many times. We are not I'm kind of a climate radical. We are not in a position to slow down our transition to renewables at all, not even close. I think we're actually the world should be taking advantage of China trying to dump cheap solar tech onto the market right now.
Yeah, they really should.
Because we can use that and install all of this infrastructure, and then when we're safer from climate change, we can slap the tariffs on later if we really need to, and we need to make a domestic industry for our own national security.
And China, this is the end here, right? China isn't a long-term threat. They're a short-term threat.
Yeah.
They're a threat for 10 years. They're not a threat for 30. They're
Yeah.
not a threat for 40, right? They're a threat for 10. And if we can get past the 10, we'll be fine.
Yeah. I mean, this will take us into a whole nother topic, but I was debating whether or not to put more bad China economy news on this. I read like 3 different articles this week that was about that, and how more of their factories are risking being shut down because their prices are deflating and they don't know whether they can afford to bring back like most of their employees. So China, you're saying China's a 10-year threat. China's threat is already like shrinking, right? So,
Yes, yeah. China's threat is already on the downturn.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Cool.